John knew something was wrong. What did he do to Emma? Was it on purpose? The first thing I felt when I woke up was the shaking. It started in my hands and quickly spread through my whole body. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I just wasn't there. It was as if my body had betrayed me. My mind screamed, but no sound came out. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding, desperate to make anyone understand. But then I saw her, Lily, my little sister, standing beside my bed with a worried expression on her face, though there was a faint smile in her eyes. She looked confused, but calm. Too calm. "You're fine," she said, the words coming out so casually. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I could feel the tears welling up, but they were useless. I couldn't even blink properly. No, I wanted to say, but again, nothing. I wanted to scream, I wanted to beg for help, but instead all I could do was stare at her. I could see her looking at me, waiting for me to respond. There was no panic, no real concern in her expression, just confusion. "Lily, help me!" My mind screamed again, but she kept repeating it. "You're fine! It's just a bad dream! You're fine!" Was I going crazy? Why wasn't she listening? Why wasn't anyone listening? The house felt suffocating. I could hear movement outside my room, the muffled voices of my uncle John and my parents, but they seemed so far away, they didn't hear me. They didn't even notice. "Everything is fine. You're fine." That's what they all kept saying. But I wasn't fine. I wanted to shout, to demand that they listen to me, but my throat was paralyzed, my body refusing to cooperate. I was trapped, frozen in my own skin. My uncle walked into the room, laughing. "What's going on in here? You're acting like a drama queen, Emma," he said, shaking his head with a chuckle. His voice was familiar, warm even, but something about it was off. The way he looked at me, there was no concern, no urgency. I couldn't understand it. "You're fine, Em. You're just tired or something," John said, dismissing my struggle with the flick of his hand. I wasn't fine. I knew something was wrong. Why didn't anyone else see it? I felt the cold sweat on my forehead, the trembling in my chest, the deafening quiet inside my mind. I could feel the panic rising. It was overwhelming. And then it happened. The paramedics burst into the room, their boots hitting the floor with an almost terrifying force. They looked straight at me, no hesitation, no confusion. They knew. One of them rushed to my side, checking my pulse, whispering to the other. I saw their faces tighten, their expressions shift. Something was wrong. They grabbed a radio, urgently calling in for backup. "We need backup," one of them said. I felt a rush of dread flood over me. What did that mean? What was happening? Why had no one noticed before? My uncle, still standing at the door, paled. The color drained from his face, and I could see his hands shaking, his earlier laughter gone. Why hadn't anyone noticed? Why was everything suddenly falling apart? And in the moment where everything seemed to hang in the balance, the question I couldn't stop asking echoed in my head. What was wrong with me? I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but the strangest part was that I couldn't make my body move. I was awake, but I felt completely detached from it, like I was floating just above myself, watching everything happen without being able to do anything about it. The paramedics were quick to respond, checking my vitals with an intensity that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But as they worked, I felt this strange sense of disbelief wash over me. This can't be real, I thought. Maybe I'm dreaming. But the pain, the overwhelming helplessness, it was too real. Lily stood beside me, her eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and fear, but it was different from the kind of fear I was feeling. Her eyes darted between the paramedics and me, but she didn't seem to understand the severity of the situation. It was like she couldn't see what I was feeling. She wasn't getting it. "Lily," I wanted to say, but the words stayed trapped inside my head. She looked at me, her brows furrowed in concern, but her lips parted as though she was unsure of what to do next. "You're fine, Emma," she repeated, her voice soft but insistent. "You're just freaking out. Calm down. Everything's going to be okay." She tried to sound reassuring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being truthful. If everything was fine, then why couldn't I speak? Why couldn't I move? "Don't Tell me I'm fine, I thought desperately. But again, my body refused to cooperate. I couldn't speak, couldn't even force my lips to move. I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare where my body was betraying me and no one could hear my screams. I could hear my Uncle John's voice, still calm and collected from the doorway. What's all this fuss about? She's fine. She's just tired or something. John always had this way of brushing off serious things with a joke or a sarcastic comment. I wasn't sure if he genuinely didn't understand the gravity of the situation or if he was just avoiding it. Either way, his response felt off. His usual jovial demeanor seemed forced now, like he was trying to convince himself just as much as he was trying to convince everyone else. No, I'm not fine, I thought angrily, but it was useless. He didn't see what I was going through. The paramedics didn't seem to share his calm attitude. They were quick and precise, their movements sharp as they assessed my condition. They whispered among themselves, the tension in the room rising. My panic only grew. What was happening to me? I tried to focus on their words, desperate for an explanation. Could it be neurological? One of the paramedics murmured. Could be, another replied. But we need to stabilize her fast. The word stabilize hit me like a punch to the gut. Stabilize? What did that mean? I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, but I couldn't even cry. Everything inside of me felt so disconnected, like I was watching a movie about my own life instead of living it. Lily's hand was on my shoulder now, but it didn't offer the comfort it used to. Her touch felt distant, like we were two strangers in a room full of confusion. She looked to the paramedics, then back at me, her face pale and conflicted. You're fine, right, Emma? She asked again, almost pleading. But then something shifted. The paramedic who'd been talking into his radio suddenly straightened, his face hardening. He turned to the other paramedic and, without missing a beat, he said, "We need backup." It wasn't just a medical term. It was a warning. The air in the room thickened. What was happening? What wasn't anyone telling me? The words hit me like a slap in the face. We need backup. What was so wrong with me that they needed backup? Why hadn't anyone realized earlier? As the paramedics hurried around, I could feel the tension growing with each passing second. Their movements became more frantic, their whispers more urgent. Every time I tried to focus on what they were saying, it felt like my mind was slipping away. The panic I felt was now turning into something darker, more suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong and that I was the only one who could sense it. Back up! I felt my heart racing even faster. What do they mean? Back up for what? I wanted to scream, to shake them, and demand they explain what was going on. But I was powerless. Every fiber of my being was screaming for someone to hear me, to understand that I wasn't just fine like my family insisted. I was in danger. My body was betraying me. And no one seemed to care enough to figure out why. Lily was still standing beside me, her expression wavering between concern and confusion. I saw her glance toward my Uncle John, as if seeking reassurance. But I noticed something I hadn't before. John wasn't acting like his usual carefree self. There was something off. His smile was tight, his eyes darting around the room like he was trying to avoid something. I had never seen him like this before. He always had an answer for everything, a joke to lighten the mood. But now, he was just standing there, fidgeting with his hands, looking like he was caught in a lie. John's eyes met mine briefly, but instead of the usual warm reassurance, all I saw was a flicker of unease. My stomach twisted. What did he know that I didn't? Emma's just tired, that's all, John said, his voice now much less convincing than it had been earlier. He shifted on his feet, clearly uncomfortable. But it was too late. The paramedics had already moved past him, assessing me with increasing seriousness. They were now speaking in a language I couldn't understand, tossing around medical terms I couldn't even try to process. I was completely out of the loop, and it felt like the walls were closing in. One of the paramedics, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, walked over to John, speaking in a low voice. I couldn't hear everything she said, but I caught enough of the conversation to know that something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong. We need to take her to the hospital, the paramedic said firmly, giving me a quick, assessing look. Her vitals are erratic. We need to stabilize her now. Hospital? Lily exclaimed, her voice cracking with worry. She looked from the paramedic to John, her face pale. What's going on with her? Why is no one telling me anything? John, looking more rattled by the second, shot a quick glance at the paramedic. Then he turned to Lily, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Don't worry about it, kid. She's fine. They'll figure it out. But I could tell Lily wasn't buying it. She looked at John with suspicion and then back to me, her lips trembling. She was no longer convinced that everything was fine. The truth was starting to seep in. I could hear Lily's voice shaking as she said, No, this doesn't feel fine, John. Something's wrong. She's not herself. She looked at me, her eyes filled with more uncertainty than I had ever seen before. The paramedics didn't wait any longer. They started to prepare me for transport, strapping me to a stretcher and moving quickly, as if every second mattered. I wanted to scream at them to stop, to ask what was happening to me, but the words wouldn't come. John stood silently by the door, his gaze following me as they wheeled me out of the room. I could feel his eyes on me, and I knew something was shifting. Something wasn't right. Lily followed close behind, her face etched with fear and confusion. I could feel her hand trembling as she reached for mine, but I couldn't hold it back. I was helpless. My body was still frozen, and the world around me was spinning out of control. The ambulance ride felt endless. Every bump in the road, every jolt of the vehicle made my fear grow worse. The paramedics continued to speak in low, urgent tones, and I could hear words like neurological issue and unsure of the cause. But what did that even mean? What was happening to me? As we neared the hospital, the tension reached its peak. I could feel my body starting to shake uncontrollably again, and I began to wonder if I was ever going to wake up from this nightmare. Then, as the ambulance pulled into the emergency room, I heard one of the paramedics mutter into his radio, "We need backup." Backup? Again? What was going on here? The hospital was chaos. Or at least, that's how it felt to me. My mind raced, struggling to process everything, while my body continued to betray me. I was aware of the flashing lights, the sterile scent of the emergency room, the soft beeping of machines, and the frantic voices of doctors and nurses rushing around, but none of it made sense. The world around me was moving too fast, too chaotic, while I was stuck, motionless, powerless to do anything. They wheeled me through the hallways, my eyes darting from one unfamiliar face to the next, hoping to see a glimmer of understanding of someone who could tell me what was wrong with me. But everyone seemed to be in a hurry. The paramedics barely looked at me as they shifted me from one stretcher to another. I couldn't help but wonder if they were trying to fix me, or if they even knew how. Lily had been silent for what felt like forever, her hand still resting against my shoulder, but her grip now was tighter. She was trembling. Her usual bravery, the confidence I had always admired, had completely vanished. In its place was fear. She was scared. "Why won't anyone tell me what's happening?" she whispered, her voice thick with panic. She kept glancing at me, looking for some sign that I was okay. But I wasn't okay. I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to believe it too. Something was very wrong. When we finally arrived in a small, brightly lit room, doctors surrounded me. They hooked me up to several monitors, checking my vitals, adjusting machines. Their focus movements contrasted sharply with the growing tension in the air. I couldn't help but feel like I was at the center of some dark storm, surrounded by people who weren't sure how to stop it. And then the therapist walked in. Dr. Rachel, a woman in her early 40s with short cropped hair and a professional demeanor, entered the room like she was ready to take control. Her presence felt different from the doctors and paramedics. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't frantic. But there was something unsettling about her calmness. The moment she stepped closer to me, I could feel the difference in the air. She didn't just glance at me, she studied me. She looked at the monitors, made a few notes, and turned to the other doctors. They spoke in hushed tones, discussing my condition with a mixture of uncertainty and concern. It was clear they didn't have all the answers, and that made everything even more terrifying. "Can we get a clearer picture of her mental state?" Dr. Rachel asked the doctor who had been monitoring me. "She's not responding. I need to know what we're dealing with." I could hear the question in her voice. What were they trying to figure out? One of the doctors replied, "Her vitals are stabilizing, but she's unresponsive. There's no indication of physical trauma, but her symptoms are unusual. We need to explore further." I could feel Lily's gaze on me. She was waiting for any sign of recognition, any sign that I was there, that I was still me. But all I could do was stare back at her helplessly. Dr. Rachel turned to Lily and then to John, who had appeared in the doorway moments before. John looked more out of place than ever, his eyes darting nervously, his hands clasped tightly in front of him as if he was bracing for something. Is there something I'm missing here? Dr. Rachel's voice had a sharp edge to it as she addressed John. What led to this sudden episode? John hesitated. It was only a second, but it felt like an eternity. His eyes met Dr. Rachel's, and I saw something I had never seen before in him. It was fear. She's fine, John said quickly, his voice tight. She just had a little breakdown. Nothing serious. But Dr. Rachel wasn't buying it. Her gaze remained fixed on him, unblinking, as if she could see right through the mask he was trying to put on. I don't think this is just a breakdown, she said, her voice calm but stern. We need to get to the bottom of this. I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something in her voice, something in the way she was looking at John, that made me feel like there was more to the story. Something was wrong with him. Something he wasn't telling anyone. The tension in the room thickened. Lily looked from Dr. Rachel to John and back again. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. It was clear she didn't understand everything that was happening, but she knew enough to sense the growing unease. And then, just as I thought I might finally get some answers, Dr. Rachel's tone shifted. She turned to the doctors, her face hardening. Get me the full psych eval, she ordered. And get it now. This isn't just physical. I could see the doctors exchanging nervous glances, but they didn't argue. They simply left the room, their footsteps fading as they went to fetch whatever information they needed. As soon as the door closed behind them, the room was silent, but I could feel the weight of what had just been said. Dr. Rachel's eyes never left John. We need to talk about what happened before this, she said, her voice low and deliberate. I could hear John's breath catch in his throat, and his face paled even further. For the first time since I had woken up unable to speak, I felt a deep, bone-chilling sense of dread settle in. Whatever was about to be revealed, it wasn't going to be good. The air in the room seemed to freeze when Dr. Rachel's words sank in. I could feel the weight of her gaze on John, the tension thickening with each second. It was like she had peeled back a layer of the facade, and now I could sense the fragile walls around my family crumbling. John's hands trembled at his sides, and for the first time, I could see how much he was struggling to hold it together. It was as if the mask he had worn for so long, always the carefree, easygoing uncle, was slipping away. And what lay beneath it was a man who was either terrified or guilty. I couldn't decide which. Lily's wide eyes flickered between Dr. Rachel and John, but she didn't ask anything. She was too scared, too overwhelmed. She had no idea what was going on, and that terrified her more than anything. I could feel her silent questions hanging in the air. Why wasn't anyone telling her the truth? Dr. Rachel didn't let the silence drag on for long. John, she said, her voice calm but firm. I need you to be honest with me. What happened to Emma? This isn't a simple medical issue. This is something else. John looked like he might say something, but the words got caught in his throat. He glanced around, his eyes flickering to Lily and then back to Dr. Rachel. It was as if he was trying to decide how much to reveal, and it was clear from the tension in his face that whatever he was holding back was heavy. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, the deep, gnawing fear that something terrible was about to be revealed. But then, before John could speak, Dr. Rachel gave him no room to stall. You need to tell me, now. Did Emma experience something traumatic recently? I saw the flash of guilt in John's eyes before he tried to hide it again. His face hardened, and his lips pressed into a thin line. I don't know what you're talking about, he said quickly, but there was a nervous edge to his voice. That's when Dr. Rachel turned to Lily, her voice softer but still sharp. Lily, I need you to listen to me. I need you to tell me everything you can about what's been happening at home. Emma's condition isn't just physical, it's psychological. And something is triggering it. Something or someone is pushing her to the edge. Lily's eyes widened, her confusion shifting into a mix of fear and realization. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come at first. I could see her processing, piecing together the fragments of our lives that had never made sense before. But then she finally spoke, her voice trembling. It started a few weeks ago, I think. Maybe longer. Emma was always fine. But lately she'd been acting different. She was quieter, more withdrawn, and she kept saying things that didn't make sense. We thought it was stress from school, maybe. But now her voice cracked and she looked at me as if seeing me in a new light. Now, I think she knew something was wrong all along. Something was wrong, but we didn't take it seriously. John shifted uncomfortably, glancing away, his face tightened. He wasn't saying anything, but his silence spoke volumes. It was clear now. The truth was coming out. Lily's voice grew more urgent. But it wasn't just her, it was me too. I didn't realize until just now, but it was like I was getting gaslighted. Every time I tried to talk about it, John would brush it off, like I was overreacting, like nothing was wrong. She turned her gaze toward him, her eyes full of hurt. I didn't see it. I didn't see him. John looked at Lily, and for a brief moment, the hardness in his expression faltered. There was guilt in his eyes now, raw and unmasked. The man I had always known to be the fun-loving, larger-than-life figure was gone, replaced by someone who looked small, weak, and broken. Emma, Lily whispered, her voice barely audible as she looked at me. I don't know how I didn't see it. I didn't know he was making things worse. John finally spoke, his voice hoarse. You don't understand, Lily. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was all supposed to be normal. I could see him fighting with himself, his every word betraying him. He was holding on to a secret that, if revealed, could shatter everything. The pain in his eyes was evident, and I knew he was afraid of losing everything. But it wasn't just the fear of losing control. It was the fear of being exposed for what he had done. John, Dr. Rachel said softly, her voice no longer stern, but filled with something almost sad. This is no longer something we can ignore. You've put Emma through something horrible, and now she's paying the price. What happened? What did you do? His lips trembled as he spoke. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think Emma would. He choked on the words, unable to finish. But I could feel it. I could feel the weight of his confession pressing in on me. He had done something that pushed me to this point. Then, the final words came out in a whisper. I pushed her too hard. I thought she was fine. I thought I could handle it. I shouldn't have. The room went quiet. Everything made sense now. The way he had dismissed my distress, the way he had ignored the signs, and the way he had kept Lily in the dark. It was all connected. He had been suffocating me with his denial. I wasn't fine. And now, he was forced to admit it. Dr. Rachel nodded slowly. It's not too late to fix this, but it's going to take time. Emma is going to need support, and so will you. As the reality of the situation set in, I felt the weight in my chest begin to lift, ever so slightly. The fog was clearing. There was still so much I didn't know, but for the first time, I wasn't completely alone in this. The truth had come out, and there was no turning back. Lily sat beside me, holding my hand. Her eyes were filled with guilt, but also determination. We'll get through this together, Emma. I swear. And as I looked at the wreckage of my family, the truth laid bare, I finally felt a sense of relief. It wasn't over yet. It was going to take time. But I was ready to fight for myself because now I knew what I had to do. I would heal. And so would my family. Did John cause all of this? What happens next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.